This is Splice.
Hello, everybody. This is I think it would be the second recording of Splice Pink, a failed project at first to record interesting stories and to talk about media entrepreneurs. Today, we're doing something different, right, Rashad?
Well, we send out these little emails, every time somebody signs up for newsletters because we're enthusiastic like that. And, when Talha Ahad in Pakistan wrote back, he said he loved the work we were doing. And then it turns out that he's the founder and CEO of Centrum Media, and they specialize in video content. I'm really excited to speak to you, Talha and Alexa.
Likewise, guys. Thank you so much for inviting us. And we are quite excited to have this chat.
So you made the mistake of responding to our emails, as as often happens. When someone signs up, they get an email from either one of us or both of us very often, if you sign up for both the newsletters, in which we would often ask, what do you do? So let's start with that question, Tal, and then over to you, Alexa. What do both of you do at Centrum?
So I think as you introduced, my name is Talha and I'm the founder and CEO of the Centrum Media. So TCM is basically Pakistan's first digital news network specializing in video content. It's been roughly like 4 years. We launched in 2017 January. In about 4 years, we have produced more than 4,000 videos on our platform. We have roughly 1.6 million followers across social platforms, and we have a reach of about like 15 to 20 million a month.
Alexa, what do you do at the Centrum Media?
Sure. So my official title is Chief Strategy Officer, and this gets into one of our, or at least part of our business model, which is linking up with the development industry. So that's my background is media development. And so I support our business development team, or I lead our business development team, and linking up with international development programming I think we're in 6 different countries we were just talking about.
Wait, 6 different countries. How does that work?
So basically, I think one thing which we are trying to figuring it out, as well as all the sort of a new startup, is like how to monetize, So there's not a lot of like funding in Pakistan and like around the world as well. So what we did was like when we launched TCM, I think after a year, like we launched like 2 other companies. So one is the Centrum Communications, which is a strategic communication company who help development sector making content, digital strategies, consultancies, marketing and distribution. And our third company is more of a TCM Studios, which is a production company where we still, so before starting TCM, just to give you a context, I was a video journalist for Vice, Guardian, BBC, and now this, and working as a freelancer for all international outlets. So still like we have, some contacts, and sometimes people reach out to us. So we still working and producing stories for international news outlets as well as for the local corporate sector as well in Pakistan. So it's a mix of news and documentaries.
So you started out, as most journalists do, wanting to cover the news, and then over time realized that you needed to do a little bit more to make money. Is that how the process went?
Exactly. I mean, like when we started, it's like a very sort of funny story in a way that I was having like a zero background about business or monetization or like anything. The only aim was to just start a platform where in Pakistan, like, the media is like very fragile. Like either you are rightist or left. There's not like a centrist sort of organization who actual report of stories, what's happening, So that was like sort of a starting point. And from there, then we said, okay, like there are like thousands of stories, like untold and unseen stories, because in the traditional media, it's just like politics and like a day-to-day stuff. Another thing which we've seen was that there are a lot of stories or a lot of things going on, but no one actually know the context about those stories. So on Twitter, Instagram, TV channels, everyone is talking about like the same thing. So what we decided was like, okay, like we are not a breaking news organization. So what we will do is like, we will wait for like sometimes like for 1 hour to like sometimes like 3 days, and then try to zoom out and give context of that story. So that is like one of the vertical of our, like news pieces. And another is like more of a human interest stories, like covering untold and unseen stories around Pakistan. And the third was like more of going deep down into the historical events and the people who are sort of adding or like added value in the Pakistani ecosystem from politics to entertainment. So as an example, recently we just finished a series with the bureaucrats of Pakistan. So like first ever time the bureaucrats like came and how the Pakistan like actual political system work. We are about to release an exclusive series on the former judges. So we interviewed like former judges, and first ever time again they are coming in front of the camera and talking about the whole judicial system. And also like one of the main sort of themes or like the core reasons of TCM is to humanize everything, whether it's like news, like human interest stories, or whether like these series. We want to like understand the people behind all of those sort of stories and like individuals and characters, like who they are and how they think, because as you know, mostly on the media, like you don't see that a lot.
I wanted to ask you, Talha, it's a question we like asking media startups. If you had to articulate what problem the Centrum Media is trying to solve, what would that be?
So there are like 2-3 different problems which we see, at least in the Pakistani ecosystem. One is when we started that time, there was no video platform. And in this time, our core audience is a young audience, like 16 to 25 or 30. And they don't want to read like 100,000 pages articles, 1,000 words articles. So what we did was trying to give them a piece of content or like a summarized information about the news or whatever we are doing in 3 to 4 minutes. And so they at least like understand. So because I was studying in UK, I did my bachelor's and master's from there. So over there, I started seeing people, okay, like you are going from university to somewhere in the car, in the bus, in the tube. You just have a few minutes to digest all the information. And you just then throw the paper and, go next. So what we did was we need to make like a really high quality video content in which the really, really difficult topics, how can you explain that topic in terms of information, visuals, understanding of that subject, like within 2 to 3 minutes. So that was the starting point, that we want to give this information in a very easy, raw, and understandable form. So that was just one thing. The second was mostly the untold and unseen stories. So there are, like, as I said, hundreds of thousands of stories across Pakistan. But on the digital as well as on TV, everyone is going into viral content, like clickbait. Okay, whatever happened, hey, like click this to understand this. But when you go into the article, there is no substance. So one of the example which we did was Pakistan's first female truck driver. So that story went viral. There was another Pakistan's first MMA female fighter from the north of Pakistan. People don't see those people. So there are like hundreds of stories like those which we covered. And after that, as soon as we start those stories, then the mainstream media then also started picking it up. Another, I think, problem which we are trying to solve is the social impact vertical which we have. So a lot of stories which we did, and then people like start contacting these peoples and like their lives are getting better as well. So there are actually 2 examples which I wanted to give. In COVID, I think we did a story on thalassemia patients. So when the COVID started, everyone was talking about the mainstream problems, which everyone was talking, but like, these thalassemia patient, transgender, like how they are coping up with all of this. So we did those stories, and the next day the government took the action. The local DC was there, like the local NGOs went there. So it's really fascinating to see the impact of all of this stuff which we do. Another story which we did was there was like a Pakistani winner of the Asia weightlifting competition. And as in our countries, like, politicians promise a lot, okay, we'll give you this and we'll give you that. But in the end, he didn't got anything. And now he is in the tandoor, like where he makes chapatis for people. And we did the story, and the visuals were really fascinating because he was wearing just a vest, and like he was a really muscular body. And he was like, I really want to do this, but I don't have money or anything, So that's why now I'm in this tandoor and making these rotis and chapatis. And the next day, the people came to the shop and he called us and he said, one of the guy came and he gave me a year of money that, okay, I will be sponsoring whole year, like, your exercises, like whatever you want to do, just go and do what you love. So there are like hundreds of examples like this, I think, which we do. And it's fascinating to see and hear stories back.
And if I can just add to that, in terms of the question was like, what problems are we contributing to? And I think this is this is a problem, I think, more globally, is that the image of Pakistan is in the news very negative, right? It's something that has been co-opted by the international media. It's something that Pakistanis don't control themselves. And then you have the international development industry, which is my background, right? Which actually wants to often co-opt it. So say, this is your narrative, or these are the kinds of stories that you want to tell. And then there's a backlash against that because people say, no, it's not your job to tell us what we are. And then there's this there's confusion, there's identity issues, there's sort of this media, and a lot of the platform for all of these sort of tensions often comes out in the media. And so it's both a problem and an opportunity that what if we could sort of really create a Pakistani narrative, and I don't mean one, I mean sort of something that's really representing the diversity and complexity of this country, and really going into the corners and finding some of the stories that Talha is talking about, that's on Pakistani's own terms and Pakistan's own terms, and not determined by what someone is writing about Pakistan in London or New York, and not what USAID is saying here in Islamabad. I can say that as an American. So I think that's something that I'm really excited about.
I love what you're saying about narrative. I was wondering how, if you're presenting an alternate narrative of Pakistani society, does it change the economics of grant applications?
So I think we have to be very strategic here. And I think that's sort of, it's something that we think about a lot and we talk about a lot, and I'm personally very interested in. I think, hopefully there are no USA people listening to the podcast, but I think some of it is also, it's not necessarily that the intentions are bad, but often you have, as I use the word, they're just co-opted. So it's basically coming from a perspective of, okay, how do we meet your goals and help you, USAID? I'm just using them as an example. We've actually never received money from USAID, but, US Embassy and the like. So basically saying, how do we help you meet your objectives while also basically holding on to ours and making sure that we don't give up too much? Because my experience was that often, there is the kind of trend now in the development field that they know that they need to kind of pay more attention to the local narrative because they've been seen as co-opting and because they've been seen as too top down. So they're trying to do that to their credit. It's not always done well, but I think we actually have, and this has been true for TCM, we actually have an advantage because we can basically say, look, we can do this really effectively, but it also kind of really calls for us to stand on our own 2 feet and say, we're not going to sort of back down or cater to your entire results framework. We may cater to some of it, but not all of it. So it's sort of using the development industry as it exists to help us reach our goals, which are far beyond the development industry. It's basically a sort of a means to get to where we want to go. Whereas often what happens is people sort of take that as their business model and then they adapt themselves to those goals and sort of lose their own. So it's the middle, in true sort of Centrum fashion, it's taking a very centrist approach.
So just one thing which I want to add when you ask about how does that affect, it's really sort of fascinating. Everyone asks us about this because, so number one is we are not funded by anyone like a local giant or corporation or anything. We got a lot of offers from these big media companies in Pakistan that, okay, can you please collaborate if you set up our digital as well. But obviously everyone has an interest, someone is on right and someone is left who is, But and we did a lot of a very hard hitting stories on the establishment as well, or a big property giants and a lot of on everyone. The fascinating thing, I think, which I still see it as it is really interesting as people ask okay, which side are you on? Because sometimes you do story, it feels like you are on rightist sort of side, but then you also, so right now we are doing a show called Naked Truth with the transgender, and it's one of the most watched shows in Pakistan right now. It's probably 10 million views, 15 million views on the season 1, and that's woman empowerment and inclusion and all of that. So whoever sort of, sometimes call us and say, okay, please don't do this and that, but at least they know that we are not funded by, or it's not any agenda. We want to be a very centrist sort of a platform. and we are giving both sides of the story, whether you like it or not. But it's not there is no agenda, at least, so that's that, at least I think what we have sort of did really well, I think, compared to like other sort of outlets.
And Julie is a really good example because, she's sort of talking about sort of leftist issues because she's a transgender woman, and she's basically speaking very, very sort of brutally honestly about Pakistani society, both good and bad things. And that's part of the reason why she's gotten a lot of attention. But she's also she's so raw that it's not polished. People sort of think, okay, this can't be really funded by anyone because it's so out of the box that it's not. So even that, which may put us in the category of sort of like less leftist or Western funded, that also can't quite be boxed in. And I think that's a strategy that Talha has had from the beginning, and it's really been sort of the I think golden ticket to success so far.
Sorry, I'll jump in here. So you've run this business for 4 years now, and in that process, you've learned obviously a heck of a lot about how to ask for money. What are some of the lessons that you wish you knew early on that would have made your life so much easier?
That's a really good question. I think one thing which I still feel a lot, but again, the problem in the start is because we were not having a lot of money to sort of focus on all the aspects of things. So as an example, building the YouTube channel, building the Instagram on the side. So what we did was, okay, the strategy should be to start focusing on one platform, build the brand there, and then move into different sort of pieces. So that was the one thing I think we should have started probably focusing on all the, from website to Instagram to YouTube and all the places.
And was your rationale there that you would have different types of treatments for different platforms? Was that why you wanted to do it differently?
Exactly. The ideally, if you want to build a YouTube, at least, so you need a long form content. So because our focus for the first year and a half was slightly shorter form content, 2-3 minute, 4-minute pieces. And that was mostly contextual news and all of that, which probably doesn't work really, really well on YouTube. So on the YouTube right now, we have changed the strategy, and now we are going into long form content with these bureaucrat series, with the series with the journalists in Pakistan, with the judges, with these, more of a shows sort of styles. It's a season 1, 8 to 10 episodes, and slightly longer form interviews as well. One other thing I think which maybe we might have done in the start, again, depending on, we were not having a lot of money to do that, to set up a different content verticals. So looking at the funders, if we build this sort of vertical, so we can go and pitch this vertical to this development or corporate sector or anything. Initially, as I said, I was having zero business background. There was no business plan. There was nothing. It was let's just make videos. I literally, sometimes it's fascinating when people hear this. I didn't know about this startup culture, literally just 2 years back. I was so focusing on work. We just have a small room with the 2 producers, 1 editor, and just doing. And then I think a year and a half or roughly 2 years back, I came to know that, okay, there's a whole startup ecosystem in Pakistan, which is building. But again, it was not a newsy. It was again a very techie, very a different sort of stuff which people were doing. So it's learning sort of every single day. I mean, to be honest, one day in the start, I think probably 2.5-3 years back, when Alexa started working full time with us. She was with us from the start, but so she said, okay, show me your accounts, and we were just on a working holiday, and I said, what accounts are you saying? She said, show me the Excel sheet, all the expense. I said, there is no Excel sheet. It's on my MacBook, and there is a note the app, and over there it's January, this is the expense, this is the expense.
I was just kind of laughing at that because I think it's it's such a hilarious point to make, but go on.
Not only that, it was let me go into this WhatsApp thread and pull information from here. We literally spent 3 hours collating
with a whole bunch of emoji as well that go with it.
How do you think of products? What's next? Would you play around with text? Would you do radio? Would you do only audio? Would you do live events? What about research, reports? What are you thinking?
So right now, I think my focus, or what I'm thinking right now, is we managed to crack the code of the short pieces of content. So that's working really well. And the next thing, I think after the COVID now, people are spending a lot of time and like doing everything digital and all of that. So there's still a gap of the long form content in terms of like all the genres, whether it's like a political show, whether it's like a social issue show. But the hook, I think over there, a lot of people are doing it, but again, not going viral or like not like a really good production quality. Again, I think the one thing which I said in the mention is to humanize that talk. So what we are doing right now is there is no plan, there is nothing. It's like a basic framework, and then you just like go about it. And then obviously the distribution strategy is also very important. It's not like, okay, you have a one episode and just put it on YouTube. Take like at least 20 pieces of chunks and like distribute on all social platforms, and from there start driving the traffic to the YouTube or wherever. Mostly, I think a long form content, which one-on-one discussions and going into the minds of people and trying to understand who they are, whether it's like a politician, bureaucrat, judges, like, anyone.
Yeah, and this is something we've also talked about. I would really like to do more live events in terms, so essentially basically like fora, because we can talk about creating a Pakistani narrative, and I understand the hypocrisy of an American, but I'm just a fanboy over here, just supporting in whatever way I can. But I think that we also know that while we've really gotten to know our audience in Islamabad and Lahore and Karachi, some of the more rural, or not even rural, but just remote parts of the country, we're certainly not necessarily targeting. And so if we're really going to sort of walk our talk, so to speak, I think we need to be continually expanding our horizons and really getting to not only our audience, but the people who are not yet our audience. So, Pakistan is 60% of the population is under 30. So it's a lot of youth. But I also think we have quite a few, like between 45 and 60, who are interested in our content. And I think bringing them into the fold, maybe even older than that, bringing youth who are in areas that we're not currently, that have different kind of interests and realities, to really understand, like, what do you see as the media?
Whoops, I think we've lost them. And just like that, we've lost the line to Pakistan, which is a bit strange. But I guess that kind of wraps up the show, doesn't it?
That wraps up the show. I love how they talked about their business and their accounts. And, we've seen so many organizations grow like that. I love the honesty. It'd be fun to watch their journey as we go.
Yeah, exactly. And on that point, this is something we hear a lot of from anyone who's kind of started up before, especially those coming from journalism, right? Walking into running your own business, you don't know how to do the books, you don't know how to do Excel, you don't know how to think about revenue and all that. And all of this stuff you learn so quickly as a result of that.
The beginning of that story is always, all I wanted to do was videos. I loved when they said that. And then you go from that to, you're producing all this work, and then you look around you and you're like, listen, I need to keep doing this. This needs to be viable.
I've got a team to pay for.
I need to be able to do this big story. And then my audiences like it. I've got validation. Now I need to do this tomorrow and then next week. And now I've got to get a better business accounting situation. And I need someone like Alexa, not just to understand the strategy and the grant making process, but to, take screenshots of my WhatsApp chats and figure out where the accounts are.
Yeah, well, that's a shame. I wanted to get more into that with them as well, to understand how they're running the business today and how they're, doing the books and doing the forecasting and budgets and all that. But we'll save that for another day, huh?
See, that gives us an excuse to call them back and catch up with them.
That's right. Yeah. So if you want to hear more from Centrum, just let us know and we'll get them back on the line.
And that was another episode of Splice Pink.
Bye-bye.